Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to see you all. So I'm Vera, the co-founder of Singulart. I'll be moderating this discussion. Are you hearing us okay? Is everything right on your side? If you have any problem, don't hesitate to let us know in the chat. I have some team members taking care of the discussion in the chat. So if you have any problem, we'll try to fix it. Super important to make sure the technique is with us tonight. Just an information, we won't take any questions from the chat, but feel free to have a discussion in the chat with our speakers today. We have many interesting questions to discuss, so we thought we will make sure to leave space for them first, but really interact. Have a great team behind in backstage that I really want to thank. Thank you, Timo, Melissa, and Claire for helping us organizing this. And yeah, I'm really happy to welcome you all for this second webinar that we are hosting at Singulart. It's the first of 2021 and on a topic that is very close to our heart about women in art. And actually, we are having a full program, a full week about women here at Singulart. We're running a program internally, externally, to try to understand how we can promote more women in the art and make sure the art world becomes more inclusive in the next years. I hope that after this discussion in the audience, you will all leave with some inspiration and maybe some concrete, actionable steps that you can take in order to promote on your side also the female artists in the art world. So today I'm super happy to have great speakers. Some of them are connecting across the Atlantic. So I have with me Lawrence, Andrea, and Rania. I will shortly introduce them, each of them, before we start the discussion. So first, let me start with Rania. Rania, she's a curator. And she has a specific focus on women, and that's one of the reasons why we were working with her to curate a collection that we're exhibiting online this week through her eyes that you can find on Singulart. She worked with many prestigious institutions. And thank you for connecting from Egypt. I was about to say from London, but not from Egypt. So then let me introduce you to our artist, Lawrence, that we've been so happy to represent since a year. So Lawrence had a career in marketing and has been now an artist full-time for 5 years. And as you can see, one of our works just on the slide, focusing on what would it be if great artists who made the art history would use Instagram today. So something really related to social media. And I'm sure she will give us a very interesting perspective on how women can use social media today to be more productive, promoted. And I'm super also happy to say that this piece that you're seeing here has been sold to a women collector who wanted to support women. So that's so great. And lastly, we have Andrea, who will surely give us another perspective on how we can bring more art into our daily conversations and how art can contribute to create conversations, because Andrea is an interior designer and she has worked on many hotels, and especially one that I want to show you an example here, Zena Hotel, focusing on promoting women and conversations about female activists, women who made history. And they asked 50 artists, female artists, to picture 50 female activists. And we were so happy that one of our artists, Anya Hobson, was able to take part in this great project to represent Wajaha al-Huwaider. I'm sorry for the super bad pronunciation, you know, the Saudi feminist activist, but you can see the portrait that Anya Hobson made for Zena Hotel. I'm super happy to moderate this discussion. I'm sure we have three great different perspectives to discuss on how to promote more women in the art world. And that's a topic that at Singulart, so I'm just moderating the discussion. But it's a topic that we've been focusing a lot at Singulart, maybe because I'm a female entrepreneur, and that's a topic that, yeah, being a female entrepreneur in the tech sector probably is the same as being a female artist in the art world. So since the beginning, I've been following quite precisely the number of female artists that we represent at Singulart. I was hoping that we can make an inclusive platform from the beginning, and I'm really proud to say that today we're not far from reaching it. Even in some geographies, some countries, we have the exact parity of female and male artists that we represent, and it's the same for revenues. Important to say, because I'm just showing data. I think it's important that we remind everybody what the state of the art market is in terms of gender disparities. Just to remind you that probably online is bringing more inclusivity and diversity, but if we look at the traditional market in 2018, we had only 11% of the works acquired by big museums, so institutions, that were made by female artists, and 2%, that's the percentage of what represents the female representation in the art market. So that's the start of our conversation, just to say that we have much work to do, but it's important also to remind everyone, and that's something that really was emphasized during the preparation of this talk, that we were all thinking really positively on the message that we want to deliver. Talking about feminism, it's important to remind that it's a battle for equality. It's not to say that one gender has to take the advantage on the other. So I have this quote from an author that I really like from Nigeria. You probably know Americana. So a feminist is a person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. So that's just an introduction to say we want to stay positive about the message we're going to deliver tonight. To start, I have a kind of broad general question for you, Lawrence, Andrea, and Rania. When did you have a aha moment, like a moment when you realized that maybe you will have to fight harder than you expected to be at the place of leadership where you are today? If I can say about my own experience, I have been raised in an environment that doesn't make any difference between male and female. I studied with many other women, and basically before I put a step in the entrepreneurial world, I had never thought that being a woman would be a disadvantage, or I would even have to fight, or that it was a difference at all. So it was kind of a shock when I realized that. And then I developed a strategy. I tried to understand my own bias and my own maybe imposter syndrome that I had. So I was really curious to know whether for you as artist, interior designer, curator, in your experience, there was also this moment when you realized, okay, I will have to have this posture and try to show that, yes, I can do as good as a man in the same sector. Lawrence, maybe do you want to give the artist perspective on that question? So maybe Andrea, can you hear me?
Nice. Well, let me start while Lawrence gets her technical. So first of all, thank you so much for including me in this forum. I think it's obviously very important. I'm very passionate about this. As a 62-year-old woman, which I am not afraid to say how old I am, which is one of the other things that women are always fighting. Men get older and more powerful. Women they want to minimize, shrink, and get them out of the way. So I'm here fighting not only for women, but for women of age who has wisdom, who have experience to share, and also have the power to produce a forum for other women and to support. And that's an obligation that I feel I have. But I was told early on, my mother was an artist, and she went back to college when I was just about 10 years old. So I became a latchkey child, as they call it in the United States. And she always told me that as a woman going into business, I'd have to work twice as hard and get half the credit. And so I was just raised with that notion. At the time when I was entering the market, they were still calling us baby and doll, and will you get my coffee? As a business owner now with studios in London and in Seattle, in a male-dominated industry of hospitality, architecture, and construction, it's true. I would say you have to fight 3 times as hard to get half the credit. The thing is that mentality also, though, if you're willing to step forward, brings you forward, because so many other women are frightened to go forward because of being shut down. So I think this forum is really good. But as a feminist, I've always been a feminist. I've always loved Gloria Steinem. I've never saw myself as having to take a back seat. I just knew that I wasn't going to get. My sense of fairness would not allow me to step back and let my brothers go in front in any market, in any industry. And so I am a full champion. I raised my daughter in the same way. So yeah, feminist is just being female. I love men. I'm all inclusive. And they have their strengths and we have our strengths, and we just celebrate our strengths.
Great. So since it's a question of how you were raised, and it's been with you for forever, let's say like like that. Rania, maybe you want to give your perspective on that?
Sure. I mean, I'm curator. Vera and Andrea, I was raised in a feminist house with a feminist dad, which is really important to have, not just a feminist mom. And also I was slightly prepared to face a little bit of gender inequality in the workplace. And it did happen at the beginning, especially with the pay gap. And because I was prepared for it, I had to negotiate and sometimes take a risk of not getting that position, but getting paid as equal to my male counterpart. And then when I did get into these positions, I've noticed that other artists and other women in the workplace were taking a back seat, and some of them were not willing to give up a great title for an equal pay raise or equal pay. And also with my work with artists, I noticed that women, if they show up and are assertive, they're considered show-offs. And this is absolutely wrong. You have to be assertive and you have to promote yourself and market yourself without feeling that you're going to be considered a show-off or arrogant.
Rania, we lost your voice.
Any of those labels. Because the male counterparts, oh, sorry. Hello?
Yeah, it's better.
I'm back.
Yeah, can you just repeat maybe your last sentence?
What I'm saying is that women have to be assertive and have to show their work and show up and not be afraid of being labeled arrogant or showing off or being too much.
Yeah, that's a perception. That's a perception bias when a woman tends to fight. She tends to be said as assertive, bossy. That's true. Lawrence, now that you're back with us, can you give us the artist perspective on whether, I know you had a career in marketing before, so maybe you were well prepared as well, but did you notice any difference? And yeah, jumping in the art world, was it different, do you think, as a woman?
I guess for me, I was lucky in the sense that I never had to face a real struggle about that. And it was kind of obvious also, like Rania and Andrea said that, you know, feminism is just about equality. Of course, at some, you know, there are some instances where, and I think to your point, it was maybe my inner views that would make sometime a barrier when there was none. But I was lucky to have to work with also people who believed in these values. So I guess, and also I never saw it as such a big barrier. So I guess I went ahead. And sometimes our internal vision helps. Like I launched into the art world, also thinking, let's do it. And so I guess it worked a little bit.
Great. Thank you for the story of where did you start with, and it's really nice to see that it's always been part of your spirit. And now if we focus on art, I would like to get your view on why do you think it's so important to highlight nowadays female artists and their works. Why does it actually matter?
Well, the figures that you showed were clear about the lack of balance. And I think we inherit of the history of our society. So until we do not reach a better balance, we need to have a positive discrimination so that people are aware of the inequality. Many people don't even know about it, are not conscious about it. So I think that's why until we get there, we need to support actively gender equality.
So making people first conscious that there is a lack of diversity, for that data is great. That's true. Nobody can contest. And do you think, are there, so you were mentioning positive discrimination, so highlighting for you would mean quotas, or how do you see that we can highlight female artists?
For example, it's already started by telling about the history of women artists, like redesigning the image that many people have is that women were not there in the past, and it's mostly because we were not aware of them. So already telling the story help understand the present and reshape the future. So that's my belief.
Okay, showing that yes, women were there. They were not just absent. Rania, I see you nodding. Can you give us your perception on why it's so important?
Because across history, women have always been seen through the male gaze, and also across history, there were game changers. There were women who started drawing and being an artist and representing themselves even in the Renaissance times. Some of them painted women. Some of them, like Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun, where she was the portrait artist who made a living out of becoming a portrait artist for Marie Antoinette and the court. And well, you can say that her privileged past or her privileged status helped her. But in that time, I think being a woman to represent herself when she made a portrait of herself holding her daughter, Juliette, and it was like taking a selfie by today's standards, because she was smiling, and women did not smile in portraits. They were stern and ladylike. And it was a scandal when it was shown at the Le Salon in 1786. And she was the first game changer. So people have to know about artists like this. The first ever African or ethnic minority woman in the 1800s, also was radical for her time. She has to be highlighted. And then artists like Frida Kahlo and the Georgia O'Keeffe, all of these women were game changers. And that's why people have to know about them. And today we think that we've reached equality already. We've reached education about feminism and equal gender rights. no, the data that you've shown still shows that we need to do more. And we need to say, you're not the only fighters. There were game changers and trailblazers across history that have tried to do that.
So yeah, you're mentioning, both of you, highlighting women from the past also, for the future generations. Andrea, for you as an interior designer, it was really important to highlight female artists. Can you give us the reason, what incentivized you to do so?
So DDA, my design studio, we see ourselves as more of a design agency, a creative agency. So we fuse interior design and architecture, art. We do our own art. We also work with multiple artists for collaboration. And so our projects are holistic experiences where the architecture supports the art. We start with the art in our projects. We start with the art because the art is the expression and the soul of the hotel, and it has the message that we want to bear. And it can be about sustainability. It can be about technology. In this case, when we did Hotel Zena, it's about women and the celebration of women. When I first started this idea, my daughter and I were on a road trip in Australia, listening to On the Road by Gloria Steinem on the audio deck in our rental car, because she had brought it with her. And we said, what would a space designed for women that represented women with no sexual stereotype look like? And we realized there's nothing out there. There was no model to draw from. You had Victoria's Secrets, you had Laura Ashley, they're all stereotyped, and they created something that didn't speak to women in power. So we found there's a big hole just to start the conversation when you see of all the public spaces, all the hotels, all the commercial spaces where they have pretty art, but the art doesn't really say anything except more and more about sustainability. So when we decided to do Zena, and pitch it to our client, who Pebblebrook Hotels, who owns it, and then Viceroy, who manages the hotel, it took the money to support it. So you need businesses to pay for the collections. We can talk about it, but if you don't have business behind you, we can't buy the collection. So you need the money of business behind you. You have to have progressive clients, progressive owners, progressive management companies who support the message. And understand that we are 50% of the world. We are not a minority.
And this, is it the way you
understand that?
Is it the way you pitch it? Is it the way you pitch it? Is it the way you pitch it to them? Like
you have to pitch it. This makes sense. We're talking 50% of the world. I know. I'm so sick of hearing about the minority of women. It's like, who's saying that? That's not true. That's the illusion that women have to be in the back seat and that men run the world. What? I mean, that is purely generated by males. So once we have businesses behind us, and I have to say, it took a lot of risk for my clients to put the money forward. They were 100% on board. They have a large percentage of women on their senior management level. So when I pitched it, we said, what took us so long to think of this? Why is this now? For us, it started the Me Too movement, and it just felt time to go right in people's face. We were right down from the White House. We wanted to make a statement with our wonderful hotelier president, who did everything he could to set back women's rights. And so we made a statement. We thought it's time to take a stand. If we could get other corporations to take that stand, if we can prove that people will spend more money, that it will drive revenue, it will drive rate, it will make our commercial clients money, we will have so much support for female artists and artists in general.
That's very interesting, because that's one of the incentives that they also start using in the tech entrepreneurial industry, saying that companies who are led by women or by a mixed duo, as we are at Singulart, of co-founder male and female, generate more revenues and are more profitable in the end. So that's true. Maybe at the end we'll show that there's an economical incentive in more inclusivity. That's super interesting. And then I was wondering, we talked about how female artists tend to be forgotten in the art history. And I was wondering, because we touched upon the topic in our previous conversation, how the online art market, but also social media, might have changed the ability for female artists, to promote themselves better. Rania, do you have like an experience or of one artist?
Absolutely. I think especially last year in the pandemic, it's been really clear that online platforms for selling art and exposing arts are the top value. It's a very valuable platform. It's free. You have direct contact with audience and collectors. You can talk to anyone about art, show progress videos in your studio, have studio visits as lives, and you can connect with so many people. I personally was not, as a curator, I was not on it like it was my window to the world and to art, because I missed art. I missed going to galleries myself, even as a viewer. So
Yeah, I think we all did.
yes, I mean, thank God there were museums doing live virtual tours. But being in this virtual tool, I thought to myself, I need to go on a platform like, I mean, Instagram is very visual as well. It's different from Twitter. It's different from Facebook, which is more family oriented or friends, and private, tends to be more private. Instagram is purely visual. And once I created an account and started following certain hashtags like Art Now or Art Online, and especially Art Now, and I discovered so many artists this way. And it's changed my way of finding artists, because before, prior to that, I used to go to graduation shows, art fairs, and so on. But this is it was a really a turning point for me. And I think it's very valuable. And artists are doing really well, like Laurence, for example.
Yeah.
Many artists in our collection, I've discovered purely on social media. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Hashtag art now. This is your Great. Lawrence, for you, like you're talking about social media in your art, but do you think social media are a way for a better promotion of female artists nowadays?
I think it's a better way of promoting any person, period. And I think it's a voice that is, I mean, your voice can be heard. It used to be that you needed to go to be represented in a physical gallery, to have journalists speaking about your work, to be seen, and you could connect only with local artists. And nowadays, of course, this has changed. So I think also maybe some women would have been shy in the past about showing their work, because they would have been intimidated to go and see a gallery that was usually run by a man. And nowadays you can show your work at least and connect with other people. So I think that's a big game changer to spread the message about also the inequalities that exist in the art world, not only for women, but for other minorities, and to connect with people. So yeah, I mean, I'm a product in a way. Social media is my subject matter, but also it's been the way I built my network.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we were mentioning in the data that I've shown, museums and traditional institutions, and it's true that probably by giving another way, as you say, for any artist, any community, any minority, social media are making it easier for some artists to stand out. You were just mentioning, Lawrence, that many galleries are run by men. So I was wondering if you can identify, all of you, some other roles than just being an artist and promoting female artists, more roles that need to be taken by women in the art world in general for the global art market to be more inclusive. Could you identify some roles where really female are lacking at top positions, and you believe, well, if we had a woman at that position, that would change a lot. I'm saying like having a female president or vice president of the United States, I hope is going to change a lot of things. But yeah, so can you identify one role in the art world, or many, where we need more women?
I think the question is the glass ceiling. I like this expression, is that we have a lot of women in many positions, but usually they have a bit less power. So, and if I look at it, I would say that it will be good when women take more high position in institutions and museums, and that will help changing like the exhibitions about women and so on. It's also a thing that if you are conscious of something, you can act upon it. So that's my take.
So museums
and
you would say?
Yeah.
Okay. Andrea, do you have also like maybe between in the creative world in general?
So, media drives a lot. Not just social media, but media. I think when we see more producers and directors in Hollywood and in the film industry, when you watch the women be heads of studio, when you see the women winning the Academy Awards for direction, when you and when you start to see the power behind the film I think Laurence made a good point. Most companies now have women in mid-management levels and upper management levels, but the boardrooms are still male. And that's pretty much all industries. So at the boardroom level, where the decisions are really being made, the decisions how much to spend on art, the decision, is still dominated by males. It's changing, and of course, it depends industry to industry, but still pretty much. So I think that once we start to see the buyers become female and they're working for the upper management, I think the museums themselves are totally stuck in the male dominant position. We met with the National Women's Gallery before we did Xena, and they are totally on board, but there's so few that are running women's collections, and it's getting better, but it's still male dominated. Galleries, in the United States, I don't know. There seems to be a lot of female galleries in the United States. I'm not sure about in Europe, but reality is just that I think that I was a fine artist and I went into interior design and architecture because I needed to make an income. And when it becomes the point that that art is valuable and people are talking about it, it's the press, it's the buyers, it's the media. And women have a different viewpoint than men. They have a different perspective, so their art is different. We have to really talk about that with social media to explain women's art is different than male's art. Well, it just is. It's a different gaze. And I think once we begin to highlight that in publications and media, it's going to become more and more desirable.
True. That's a good point. Media is working on our perception of the world and our stereotypes. Rania, as a curator, did you meet some great women at some positions that you think is helping?
The Serpentine Gallery just appointed its first female top head of the gallery, and I personally worked with the first woman who headed the Tate in Britain, the Tate Group, the whole Tate Group in Britain. I think what I would say, this is a good step, and other countries like the UK have to start doing this as well. But for me, I think women in tech, art technology, and the online sphere, people, entrepreneurs like you or your co-founders who founded Singulart, people who are in top position to allow the online platform to hold even more exhibitions and promotions for female artists, because I think personally the next decade is going to be it digital art and online platforms. You're seeing blockchain art and crypto art even creep up on the scene, and people are really taken back by all of this, myself included, trying to study it more every day. I think women in tech, and entrepreneurs and women in tech as well, have to jump on board, definitely. And I think also men in, like your co-founders, men like your co-founders who believe in that empowerment, who are enabling women, not just women enabling women, but also men enabling women, you know, it's very important.
If I could just jump in on that. Sure. We have found so many men who are, I mean, I couldn't have done my hotel without my male partners. Yeah. I mean, this is a partnership. This is not, we're better than they are, they're better than us. This is inclusive. And I think there are a lot of men on TripAdvisor. Hotel Zena has many men who love it as women. And I think there's an army of men out there to help us.
For sure.
And I think, thanks for bringing that up, Rainey.
Like Reed and Denis as well, your co-founders.
Yeah, my co-founders. Yeah, they're very, like, it's a common fight. It's something that we are working on together, to have all these female artists on board, to also try to have a mixed team at the top management, at different levels of management. That's very important indeed to say this. Talking about the tech, we have a lot of work to do, because there are only 20% of developers that are women. So if we want more of them in our team, we need to work hard.
Definitely.
Yes. And Andrea, you were mentioning there is this, and both Rainy and you mentioned the female gaze, and the fact that art made by female artists is different. I wanted to question this in order to see how we can see further than that, and go beyond maybe bias or stereotypes. Do you have something, Lawrence, on that? Maybe do you consider your art as produced by a female, like a woman?
So I have mixed, I mean, there are artists who you won't be able to say if it's made by a man or a woman. If you take Carmen Herrera, her work is minimalist, abstract. I mean, it doesn't have a specific female gaze, I would say. And there could be more examples like that. So I think it's a question that could be reassessed. As for me, being a woman certainly influenced some of my choices. Like I revisit art history, and so I chose to include, when I had in the comments the choice to include a man or a woman, I would pick the woman most of the time, because I want to have this representation of women who've been helping artists, curators, collectors, and so on. So it did influence my work, but I think it's not necessarily the case for every artist, I would say, but I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Andrea, do you want to jump on that?
I do. So, you know, the women, as women, we tend to be more compassionate and empathetic. Our journey is inward, where a male journey is often outward. They do the Odyssey. So we tend to put our work, our emotions are more visible in a strong piece if it's a female-centric piece. You're absolutely right. A landscape, a beautiful minimalist, you can't really tell. Maybe that you'd really have to start to study it. But because we're, you know, it's a perspective, just like in painting, women have a different perspective of life. And if we put our emotions into our work, you're going to feel that. In good art, not decorative art, right? I mean, in strong, powerful art. So I do really think that it's an untapped market, the textile market. You know, there's so many things, like the textile market is amazing. And it's just like beginning to get out there. And, you know, that's all based on the sewing circle and the village circles. And it's so amazing, but there hasn't been a big market for it. So I think that as women get more and more into the market, and we give them that forum, we're going to discover so many amazing things that we haven't seen because they haven't been represented. I just really, that's my personal viewpoint.
Yeah, and maybe because we might have many women artists listening to us today, give us some kind of the criteria or how you selected the female artists for Zina Hotel, because I think you were looking for this powerful emotions. So that was really interesting when we discussed that last time.
For me, all of our hotels, regardless of the subject matter, is a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. I'm a visual storyteller. My hotel has to have a very strong message of some type in order to make it compelling and to draw our guest into it, just like a piece of art. So that's why we focus on the art. We build the space to hold the art and to support it when we create a space and an installation. So it's very much an installation format. But the storyteller portion of it, what we want to do with Zina is start a conversation. We believe that talking about it, shining the light, sharing stories, help people understand our point of view and help them understand there is a difference on how we're treated. So we wanted to, we didn't want to be labeled as angry women, for God help us. We wanted to bring our guests into the experience and have the art become our warriors. So the space is warm and curvilinear, soft and inviting, very female in form. The art we saw as our sentinels, our power, they're fierce, they're protective. So the art triggers the conversation that leads to the conversation we really want them to have, is why are we having this conversation? And so the art triggers conversation. So when we started looking for artists, we were looking for artists with their own story. We were looking for artists who were showing their emotions and their feelings about gender equality in their work, because I wouldn't be there and they wouldn't be there to express what that message is. And we needed to have powerful pieces. Often when our portrait gallery, we gave the artist 30 names to choose from of women in the past. You know, we all stood on somebody's shoulders to get to where we are, ladies. This has been for historically. I mean, this is historically, women have always been pushed aside since, you know, the Greeks. So I think that that part of it is so important for art. For when I'm building a collection, I'm starting a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So we are specifically looking, and you're right, Lawrence, there's tons of amazing women art that doesn't have a message that we look at and we say, beautiful art. I love this piece, but it doesn't say what I want it to say for our installation. So depending on the project we have, and we have all these different type of projects, but the Zinas are about female accomplishment, celebration, and highlighting the struggle that women have to face and are still facing. And so the art had to be compelling enough to draw people in to ask questions so they could learn about the artist's story, the subject matter of the portrait story, and the story of Zina and why they're here to trigger these conversations. So it's a three-way, we kind of hit them from all sides.
Yes, I imagine.
And so that's what we do. We create this like hive, this forum, and we give them cocktails and we treat them really, really nicely, and we get them talking, and we hope through that discussion, we will just maybe share some points that people have never really thought. They just, all we're trying to do is teach, just like women do. Okay?
So you were looking for point of view and artists who could express point of view.
We are looking for a very strong point of view is in regards to, for Zinas, it's totally, the conversation is about gender equality internationally.
Okay, Rania, on your side, the female gaze is something super important as a curator, and especially for this collection that you curated for Singulart, Through Their Eyes, female gaze. So we talk about this way of seeing the world.
I think people like Andrea, we have to clone you or we have to duplicate you. It's what you're doing is incredible. And yeah, coming back to the female entrepreneurship, we need women like Andrea, more of them. And what she's saying is right, because all females have a different perspective on something unequal or something unfair that happened to them. Well, for my collection, I was looking for another narrative, which is color, gentleness, and sensuality, because especially this year, being in such gloomy circumstances, I felt like art needed to come in with color and beauty and just enveloping emotions. And some of the artists are abstract, but you can still see in their work that sensuality and that use of color, especially the orange color with the female chakra. And it's the color, the orange color is the color of the chakra of creativity and female power. And this is, it's a kundalini, you know, it's a rise of energy. And I wanted to focus on that. And the collection features figurative and abstract, and they all share the same beauty and optimism, you know, that I wanted to bring indoors for this duration.
Okay, thank you for the perspective on female gaze, all of you. Now, if we want to look into the future, I'd like to leave the audience with some positive notes. So I wanted to get from each of you one tip that you would like to give to young women, or that you even already gave to your daughter. I don't know, but yeah, something important, a positive message for the future. Andrea, do you want to start? You already mentioned your daughter, so I'm sure you you told her already many tips.
My daughter's fierce. She's a filmmaker. She went into directing, so she has to be fierce. So, you know, she's gonna have to work 3 times as hard to get the credit. So I would say confidence. Don't step back. Don't apologize. When people compliment you, say thank you. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to step back. It's not rude. You have to be confident. You have to take the credits. You have to make sure you're given the credits and earn it. The key is you're not entitled to it. Earn it. Earn their respect.
Thank you. Rania? What is the tip you want to give to young women?
I couldn't say anything better, but I would just say, don't let anyone control your narrative. Know yourself very well, and don't let anyone tell you what to do. I mean, you can listen to advice, but don't let anyone dictate your actions or what you should do, especially with your passions. Find a way to finance your passion, but don't let it go. Don't settle, just keep going.
Lawrence?
Yeah, so as for me, I have 2 boys, and it's interesting, you know, to try to make them feminist boys. I think I see things are changing. Like for them, it's totally normal that women are playing soccer and that, you know, they follow the World Cup with passion. And in the US, it's even more present. So for them, it's I see that things are changing, and it's every day. So consciously, I will, for example, never tell them, don't cry. It's not a good thing because you're a boy. And I think it's this gender bias that we have to work on every, you know, step of the way. As an advice, I would say network and don't be shy. Build your community, and that's a key to building your path. And also be kind. Like if you want to receive, you also have to give. So it's a 2-way street.
Great. And was there a book, a film, or a role model, a woman that influenced you a lot or gave you strength, Lawrence?
Well, a book that recently had an impact on my work was 9th Street Women by Mary Gabriel. It's a big book, but I really recommend it highly. It's about the history, and it explains how beyond the women that are in this book, how New York became the capital of the art world after World War II. And it led me to create this collaboration with Art Girl Rising. I have this t-shirt here, and to work on the awareness about these women. So it's been an important book for me.
I think we all need inspiration, our audience too. Andrea, do you have one recommendation?
So there's a book that that I'm just starting into right now that was highly recommended to me. It's called Cassandra Speaks. It's by Elizabeth Lesser. And it is pretty much when women are the storytellers, the narrative changes. And so it's about storytelling and how women tell a different story. And so, I think there's some really good books coming out about that I think are important.
Yes, for sure. Female authors are bringing a lot to literature and to build role models for ourselves. True, that's very real. Berthe Morisot, Gala, Clara Malraux. So she wrote about all these women that we tend to forget, and her books are amazing in order to write indeed another narrative. And I do think, as you say, Andrea, that when it's a woman who is writing, it's changing also the way we can identify to the characters. I really want to thank you all for being with us today. And just before leaving, I just want to ask you because all of you are speakers, the audience we hear, in order to make this progress and have more female artists. So we thought about asking you to share on your social media via the hashtag Through Her Eyes, to tag one female artist that you recently discovered that you just love. So we will see many artworks from female artists on social media, I hope, thanks to this hashtag. So please share it, give us some inspiration. Really, Andrea, Rania, Lawrence, I really want to thank you for being with us today, accepting to discuss your perspectives on being a woman in your field at your level of responsibility. Thank you very much. I also want to thank my team backstage, but also generally speaking, the whole Singulart team who is working so hard at empowering artists, women and men alike. We need both. And we really hope we will contribute to a bigger change in order to have more female artists represented in museums in a few years. So thanks a lot. This session will be recorded, so you will be able to find the whole session on our channel on YouTube. Don't hesitate to share it if you liked it, to spread the word that yes, we need more women in tech, in the art, and that's with inspiration like you and role models and conversation like we just had. That is very important to raise awareness, but also to give some concrete tips and positive messages. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Singulart, thank you for this endeavor, and thank you. I had the honor of curating this collection with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.